I'm delighted to welcome to the Perfect Health podcast today, Dr. Mitch Abrams, who is speaking to me from Canada. So welcome, Mitch.
Thank you, Elaine. Pleasure to be with you.
So, Dr. Radiologist, I believe.
Yes.
Okay. So, how did you get into radiology? There's so many different forms of medical expertise. What led you to radiology?
Oh, that's a good question. I actually thought I was going to go in and I was going to be a surgeon, and it was in my last month before our what we call CARMS, which is basically the match system for choosing your specialty. I realized that just the surgery thing just wasn't for me. And I just happened to stumble upon this field of radiology and diagnostic imaging, and it just fascinated me because we were really working with amazing technology, and it was the full facet of the whole being, looking at the individual as a whole. And we would have to speak to multiple different disciplines and different physicians in a run of a day, and have to speak, to enough depth of their knowledge. So it kind of, instead of becoming very pigeonholed in one area, this allowed a full breadth, of looking at health and wellness in a much greater scope. And it brought in, my mind. I'm a very physics-oriented individual, and the idea of using X-rays and photons and the laws of physics and understanding energy, and how we as human beings are also made of energy, how these energies all interact to create, these amazing these images, and how to explore the human body without a scalpel blade also truly fascinated me. So that's, long story short, how I found myself in this field.
And how long have you been a radiologist?
I've been practicing for about 12 years. But I have to say my career took a bit of a turn very early on. In my very first year of medical practice, I found out that I required open heart surgery. And very early on, I found myself in the operating room, experiencing our medical model from the other side. And that really opened my eyes to a whole new perspective of our model of care. And then when I returned to work shortly afterwards, I was then appointed as the chief of our department in the hospital. So in a very short time frame, I experienced our entire healthcare model from the bottom up, from a patient perspective, but also as a physician and as an administrator, looking at the underbelly of the business of medicine. And it was at that point I realized how narrow in scope our entire model of medicine was, and how disconnected, the upper echelon of administration and the way, the people who were making these decisions, they were just so disconnected from patient care and the frontline workers who were providing the care. How we study and define health and wellness in medical school was so narrow in scope. So it was at this point that I started traveling to other countries and started looking at how other cultures approached health and wellness. And I became very interested in India, and I had opportunities to begin studying and learning from different spiritual masters and swamis and gurus, where their approach to health and wellness was more from a mind, body, and spiritual perspective. And the spiritual sciences was nothing that I've ever experienced in our Western medical educational program, but yet it was something that I found awakening within me during this time of healing. And this kind of really put me on a different path to basically where we are now, where here we are talking about, the whole person and a whole new approach to health and wellness. And this is now where I focus most of my time on, focusing on educating health practitioners on this new science and how it applies to not only our health as individuals, but how we can apply it to patient care and community health.
You've mentioned that you're sort of physics-based individual, and you've mentioned science. How does the woo-woo kind of fit together? Because a lot of people would consider the spiritual side of things all a bit esoteric and not quite there, sort of thing. How do you mesh the two?
Well, it's interesting, you know, if you stand back. I mean, Einstein said everything is energy. And if you stand back from a scientific perspective, you know, everything in medical science is forms of energy. You know, we read your blood pressure, your respiration rate, your brain waves, and the fact that an MRI machine can non-invasively dissect the human body like a loaf of bread to explore your brain and fly through your blood vessels. The only reason why that's possible is because you and I and everybody on the planet, we are all beings of light. We are energetic beings. You know, we are made up of trillions of cells. Those cells are made up of atoms, and those atoms are really vibrations of light at its core. And what I find interesting is that when you study, you know, the spiritual sciences and you start looking at what spiritual wisdom and ancient scriptures have been discussing for thousands of years, they also discuss energy. They also discuss that we are spiritual beings and beings of energy having a human experience. And so we are now at this very interesting point where even, you know, the publications that are coming out that are now helping us understand that our emotions and the energies of our thoughts interact with a field of energy, a quantum field that connects us all. And this has profound effects in our own health and wellness, but also in how we perceive and interact with the world around us, how we are interconnected to each other. So I feel that, you know, people who are very skeptical, the moment they start to really think about the technology that we're using in the Western world, the fact that, you know, we are energetic beings, we're made of light, is the moment they begin to reframe, you know, they can kind of begin to open their mind to a new reality and, you know, a new perspective that, you know, can help them empower themselves with a new approach to health and wellness.
When you came back from your wanderings, shall we say, how were you perceived by the peers that you trained with?
Well, definitely it was interesting. You know, I started giving talks at, you know, grand rounds at the hospital and discussing this. And I would say that 50% of the room, you know, loved it. You know, you had another 30% that were kind of skeptical, and then, you know, the other 20% didn't know what the hell I was talking about. And, you know, over the last 10 years, there's been such a shift where I think now there's enough conversations around quantum physics. There's enough conversation around mental health and resilience. And certainly COVID has brought about a new push where people are hungry for, you know, a new approach to health and wellness. You know, the Canadian Medical Association Journal in May 2019, they published an article that identified suicide as the only cause of death, higher among doctors than non-doctors. So, you know, we, you know, as a medical community, we need this information more than anyone. And if we're going to lead by example, if we're going to be able to provide the care, the appropriate care for our patients, and really pride ourselves on a patient-centered model, evidence-based, you know, this is the information now. This is a new chapter that's emerging, and there's a real shift to the point now where, you know, from the early days where, you know, I had some surgeons, you know, that couldn't even wrap their mind around the idea that, you know, you could rewire your mind and, you know, through neuroplasticity, to today where, you know, our Royal College of Physician Surgeons recognizes this curriculum that I provide doctors around the art and science of self-care, patient care, and community health, discussing these concepts of energy and the relationship, to mind, body, and spirit. Medical students can now take an elective course that is helping them understand this new perspective. So there's definitely been a radical shift over the last decade, that the door, I feel now, is open, so that doctors who are, many people, and I find now, the comments that I find when I'm doing, rounds with medical practitioners, many of them say that they felt this. They've always felt this intuition, and they're reading books now that are discussing, whole person, health and wellness. So I feel that there's definitely a radical shift that has happened, in a very short time, over 10 years, that's really, very exciting. From a medical perspective, and, as a radiologist particularly, this is the fringe of science, that people typically don't think of themselves as beings of light, but yet we rely on that technology every single day. And now for doctors who still refuse, if their ego, kind of gets in the way and they refuse to even open their mind to this new approach, then you just have to ask them, well, are you going to stop sending your patients down to the radiology department? You send all your patients down to us. So it is this new perspective that is, creating a new path for new opportunities for future healthcare.
That's absolutely wonderful. And as you say, the timing is now right, with the COVID thing, has opened people's eyes to the fact that we all need to take responsibility for our own health and well-being. Nobody's going to do it for us. We have to do that. And the only way we can do that is by opening our eyes, reading books, listening to interviews like this to then take the next step. How do you feel that Big Pharma is reacting to this, though? Because if you're dealing with things at a spiritual level and a light being level, there's no pill for that. There's no medication for that, is there?
No, that's interesting. So this is a tough call for the Big Pharma. I think there's, look, I'm not saying that everything in Western medicine is bad. I'm a believer that we need to take the best of the West and integrate the philosophy of ancient wisdom. With that being said, the pendulum has swung too far towards, the idea that health comes from a bottle. And from my own, medical experience, I can see patients are now, even, patients who are being diagnosed with cancer, many patients do not want to go down the typical path of chemotherapy. They want a new approach. And unfortunately, our model it has just not been able to keep up. We run on algorithms, and so patients who empower themselves to, visit a naturopathic clinic and, start to look into other, approaches, they're kind of left in the middle because they can't receive the typical blood tests and imaging if they've veered off of the typical, algorithm of, the Western allopathic model. And so Big Pharma now has to really, begin to diversify. And it's interesting because even within their own organization, if you think about employee health, engagement, business practices, all of this new information that we're talking about applies to organizational health. It applies to innovation and creativity, conscious leadership. And so within the organization themselves, they really need to begin embracing these concepts for their own survival and their own, for their own benefit. And at the same time, that's going to create a bit of a reckoning and a reconciliation, that a balance that they need to, find, because like you said, much of this is all about self-empowerment. Now, that being said, it is interesting that a lot of, from what I understand, Big Pharma is doing, invasive research like percutaneous innervation of the vagus nerve to see what that does to the body. And they're applying this, kind of very, technology heavy invasive approach. But at the same time, just by sitting and focusing the mind, like what I call like a mental push-up, when you learn a very simple, these mental exercises, you can activate the vagus nerve, and you don't need to have a needle, an electrode stuck into your neck and stimulated. So yeah, it's a very good question. It'll be very interesting. And I actually think big pharma, those who are going to take the bull by the horns, can have a great opportunity to play a major role in, a brighter future for healthcare. It's just a matter of they're going to fight it or they're going to embrace it and become a partner in this kind of exciting new chapter.
My own view is that they're so big now. I think they're going to continue to steamroll, and people like us who believe in an integrative approach, take the best of what's available, spiritual stuff, surgery and medication when we need. I mean, you can't fix a broken bone with a spiritual approach, as far as I know, but maybe you can. But generally speaking, I think if we take the best of all sorts and have a good fusion.
Absolutely. And that's why I say I think we have to take the best of what we have and best of the technology and incorporate. We'll find a new balance. The pendulum will swing back to where we can bring the art back to healing, the art back to medicine. But with that being said, there's tons of research. Dr. John Kabat-Zinn's some of his earliest work, they show that the human body will heal, up to 4 times faster when you learn how to focus your mental muscle, when you can flex your mental muscle, use your imagination. So, in a medical term, this is conjunctive therapy. I mean, sure, if you have a broken arm or a sprained ankle, your spiritual practices can have a very profound effect on your healing. And it may not be the end all, it might not be the only thing at this point, but certainly it helps. It goes a long way.
Absolutely. I've done a lot of mentoring and support for people newly diagnosed with cancer, and helping their families and themselves come to terms with what's what, and also deal with an integrative approach, as I've mentioned. I was given less than a year to live in 2015 with stage 4 cancer, and I beat it in 14 weeks using approaches that you've spoken about. So the mental approach, the resilience is just awesome. So with the work that I've done over the years, specialising in psychology and behavioural profiling, I now use that in my program to help people to look at the mind body spirit connection, but in terms of their behaviour and how their behaviour is getting in their way. And then once they realise that they're actually perpetuating their own sickness, their own illness, their own, the language they use, I've got cancer, I've got this, I've got that. Well, they become the thing that they keep on thinking about, talking about. So, disassociating. So at one level we are connected, but on another level we need to disassociate, and we are not the thing that we've been labelled with.
Absolutely. A Swami once said that, every individual is like a beautiful piece of art, and every color, every paint stroke is the result of a past event and how we perceive that event, and we see the world through this piece of art. Either it's very positive or negative, but yet through these mindful or self-regulation techniques, we can learn to separate the paint from the canvas, and to truly appreciate that we have this pure potentiality of being the canvas, and then eventually we can repaint the canvas. But it does take work, and it takes that level of self-awareness without judgment, and to, like you said, really, shift the mindset and understand just how powerful we are as individuals.
Yeah, we truly are. So tell us about NexGen. You've set up something which I believe is a not-for-profit education organisation. Tell us about that.
Well, NexGen is actually a social enterprise. So we believe that we can create profit, but the profit can be put into a social impact and create healthy minds and thriving communities, particularly when using the power of the arts and technology. So NexGen Health really kind of takes the approach from a top down and a bottom up perspective. From a top down, we deliver a lot of educational programs. We offer programs for doctors, health practitioners, many of which are accredited, so physicians can get their continuing education credits that they require on an annual basis. And we also have certification programs for clinics. So we have programs for the practitioners. We have an online program for the general public where they could also get essentially tuned into the same knowledge that these doctors are receiving. But, you know, by using art, we can really bring a deeper level of context to the general public so that they empower themselves and then can be part of the process of helping bring this to their physicians and bring this to their, you know, community of healers. Because, you know, as healers, you know, we are all part of one community. We're not truly that separate from each other. And it turns out doctors need this more than most. So that's our top-down approach, all these kind of educational modules. And from the bottom up, we're working with artists and musicians, creating a radical art collection where we can co-create art together, where the art becomes the tool to further educate and bring awareness around energy, help raise coherence levels, and the money used or created, the money that we are creating through the selling of this art and the auctioning of the art will be used to purchase these heart sensors that can be used in mental health and resilience programs that we will donate into schools, donate to frontline, you know, health workers, marginalized communities. So we can help provide these resilience programs, but at the same time, demonstrate the global heartbeat. And what I mean by that is that our heart rhythms will synchronize with each other when we are within that intention of appreciation and love for each other. So this becomes a local is global approach to health and wellness. You know, we're in the midst of creating this as a large research project where we can study, overlay, you know, heart coherence levels with mental health, and again, really help illustrate and highlight to people and say, look, we have a global heartbeat. We are all part of this global community. And so the art becomes a new vehicle, a funding pipeline to not only help us create this new sustainable model, but it chronicles the emergence of this conscious and coherent global community.
Wow, that's absolutely beautiful. What a wonderful, wonderful thing. And also dear to my heart, excuse the pun, but I used to run cardiovascular health clinics 10 years ago. And I remember one time I had a consultant cardiologist who lived in the next village to me, and he was most upset that I was talking natural solutions rather than medication. And he reported me to the local trading standards people, and you know, I had an investigation and all sorts. And then eventually he ended up apologizing to me, and I trained him on what I was doing. So that was really
Beautiful.
cool. You know, things
Beautiful.
do come round, you know. But that was many years ago, and I love that global heartbeat. That's a really cool description, isn't it? Absolutely. And
yes.
local is global. Yeah, really cool. So what's your website, Mitch? How can people engage with you?
Sure. Well, my website is NexGenHealth.solutions. So NexGen Health.solutions. And we actually have a number of free offerings. We're all about breathing life into community and really, you know, wanting to create a conscious and coherent community that people can feel connected to. A big part of what's missing in healthcare today is that feeling of connection and having a community to feel connected to something bigger than ourselves. So on the 18th of every month, and 18 is a very powerful number. Spiritually, it means life, but a number is the language of science. So where science and spirituality meet on the 18th of every month, we hold a live 1-hour Zoom call. And we get together, we discuss community and connection, what connection means to you. We share with each other, and we also have opportunities to work with the heart cards, where people can color, decorate on them, share your message, share your intention, what connection means to you. And then when you share them on social media and you tag us or tag me, then that will be incorporated into the radical art. So we're capturing your energy into these pieces of art. We're capturing this moment in time. We're in such an amazing mystical moment of transformation. So we want to have these opportunities on every month to bring people together, share with each other, and capture that collective energy. So everyone's welcome to it. And certainly I can share with you an email address that if people email, you'll receive the Zoom link to register. And as well, I will also share with you another Zoom link for every night, Monday to Friday, I do heart coherence meditations between 6 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. And again, if you have a heart sensor, you can use it. We're measuring the amount of love that we're depositing into the unified field that we're all connected to. And again, the energy that we are accumulating will be chronicled and recorded on every piece of art. So again, just another way to be part of this, growing community. So if you're interested in connecting in heart or learning how to connect to your own heart and hence connect to each other, you're more than welcome. It's an open invitation. And again, I'll share that Zoom link with you. On the website, you can learn more about the energy certification for those who want to have a deeper dive, and you get energy certified. So, just another thing you can put on your CV and really kind of show people what your values are, in a new day and age where we've got so much social divide and, so much kind of anger and frustration. I think it's important where we begin to, show each other, for those who have this like-minded perspective and who are aligned in heart and understand that the future is only going to be viable when we begin to understand our interconnectedness. This is an opportunity that people can, show and show the world, what they believe in.
Fabulous, absolutely fabulous. Remind us of that website again, Mick.
Sure, it's NexGen Health.solutions. And we also have a Facebook group as well that people are welcome to join. It's called the Conscious and Coherent Community. So NexGen Health's Conscious and Coherent Community. And that's another place where people are starting to connect and share their thoughts, learn more about coherence and energy, and a place where you can just feel connected and feel like people have your back.
Wonderful, thank you.
Or I should say people have your heart and best in mind.
Wonderful, that's fabulous. Any top tips for people before we close?
Well, I recognize that everybody is, on their own journey. Everybody is somewhere, and like, again, a wise man once said, we're all fruits on this tree of life, and we're all ripening on our own time, but it just so happens that we're in this new galactic season, this dawn of a new galactic age. And, in respect to that, some people are much further along in their kind of spiritual evolution. Some people are just, tuning in. But I find it fascinating that we as individuals, we have this amazing capability to connect to our heart, and the heart holds this energy. It's like we are receivers, like a radio. Mm-hmm. And if we learn to tune in, we have this amazing capacity to not only, self-regulate, so that if you're feeling stressed or you're feeling triggered, this really helps you, calm the mind, slow your thoughts down, reconnect, and it will help you process whatever it is that you're going through. And it will deepen your healing process, no matter what it is that you are, healing with. And, by connecting to your heart, you're connecting to everybody else's heart. We are that connected, and we have the technology to measure it. We have amazing research that shows what happens to our communities when we do this together. And this, I truly believe, is a major tenet of how we will bring about a new paradigm of not just health and wellness, but a new era of peace, a new era of global harmony, and really bring about a renaissance of a new understanding of how to create a brighter future that's very distinct from our past.
Let's pray that comes about, and let's look forward to a brighter 2022. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Elaine. Pleasure chatting with you.